Greetings from Costa Rica. It's Friday, November 22nd, 2024. And if you've been paying attention to the news here in Costa Rica, you've seen that large parts of the country are dealing with severe flooding. Thousands of families have been affected by enormous torrential rainfall this month of November that has caused the evacuation of thousands of people from their communities. You've seen damage to homes. You've seen some really severe consequences, even to the national infrastructure. Today, I want to give some straightforward, simple ideas about helping in these types of scenarios here in Costa Rica. I've lived and worked in Guanacaste since 2008, and for a large part of my 16 years here, I was involved in community organizations. So my perspective is always shaped by that experience first and foremost. Really quickly, I do want to provide a quick introduction in Spanish so any Costa Ricans might understand my topic for today. I will be back to English in just a moment. Muy buenos días, buenas tardes. Espero que no hayan sufrido por estas inundaciones en todo el país. Hoy mi emisión, especialmente por tener mi audiencia de extranjeros, va a enfocar en las ideas y estrategias de ayudar a las comunidades frente a este tipo de crisis. Entre otros asuntos, voy a dar ideas no tanto de ayudar primero en lo inmediato, pero también a largo plazo en lo que es ayudar a familias a construir mejores casas, ayudar con salarios aptos, etc. Si ustedes están interesados en contactarse conmigo, mi dirección de correo electrónico está aquí y con muchísimo gusto también podemos conversar en español. So today's broadcast is focused really on giving these straightforward ideas so that you'll be able to support communities here in Guanacaste or wherever in Costa Rica in the most effective way possible. First, I want to touch on the fact that in many Costa Rica small communities, especially along the Pacific coast here in the areas that I know, there are active grassroots organizations that are working at the community level that can be absolutely the most effective way for you to channel any support that you want to give directly to the community. In short, it's really the most efficient way to make sure that if you're going to donate $1, that 100% of that dollar ends up as material support for a community family. These grassroots NGOs, for example, north of us in Tamarindo, there's Sepia that does amazing work. They're the ones that know the families that are affected. They have an intimate knowledge of who needs the most help. And because of their localized experience, they actually have an understanding of what is most urgently needed by the communities. And if you're looking to make your home here in Costa Rica, you should first and foremost have a good understanding of which organizations are active, and you should be ready to support locally in your community those organizations when this sort of crisis hits. One really notable form of organization is the local Asociación de Desarrollo. These are the development committees, and really they're the most local form of a council that actually focuses on helping your community. If the ADI in your community is organizing any type of flood relief, they can absolutely be one of the best organizations to support, because truly they are a council of local interested people who are either coordinating outside material support or directly contributing to the families that they know need it. So absolutely, rather than those huge international NGOs with the fancy ad campaigns, I highly recommend you get acquainted with those grassroots organizations and try to find ways to support them. Second of all, yes, there are many foreigners out there who will and should offer to provide direct material support to Costa Rican families that they know. It can be really difficult for a family who is already struggling with very low income to have this type of disaster, ruin their mattresses or cause material damage to their home. And suddenly every spare dollar that they have is dedicated to replacing that mattress, getting new linens, or whatever they need to do. If you have families that you know and love here in Guanacaste, now could be a great time to ask them, especially if they're in those communities that sprung up along riverbanks, if they're living somewhere that was affected by floods, whether or not they could use your help. One form of supporting families that I want to mention specifically is that very often, the Costa Rica national government does have free housing programs that are available, sometimes to single mothers, other times just to families. And one thing that I've seen in my 16 years living here is that there are plenty of families who absolutely need these homes, which are called bonos de vivienda, free housing that are donated to different families. But many times they don't have the simple resources needed to be able to apply for that bono de vivienda. You have to have a lawyer who does some paperwork for you. You have to own a little piece of land free and clear in your name. If you have Guanacaste or Costa Rican families that you want to support directly, not only can you consider in the near term working out what material damage has been done, you could talk about opportunities where possibly they could either upgrade their existing home, move to an area that's outside of that floodplain or not right along that river, or help connect them with that little bit of starting money that's needed to get into better housing and find an opportunity for themselves through one of those programs. In my Peace Corps town, it was as simple as organizing applications, printing out documents. We even had families pay the legal fees once they had saved up, and we got a lawyer involved who was willing to help out. That can be one very effective way to eventually help a family move into a better house with a location that won't be as vulnerable to flooding. Let's talk about some of the more long-term macro ideas that I have. And one is always going to be to fundamentally support the truly local economy so that you're really building resilience against disasters and all kinds of climate-related problems. Climate vulnerability is directly related to the socioeconomic status of families that live in an area. And here in Costa Rica, as a foreigner looking to help the country, to positively impact the community, you always need to find ways that your money directly benefits local entrepreneurs, families, etc. And let's touch on wages here. Everybody knows that the cost of living in Costa Rica is going up. Inflation here in the country is affecting us just as much as any other place on earth. And when you're paying people to do services for you, whether you own a property or whether you're just visiting, you need to consider the real true cost of living here or where you're paying the person, and make sure that you're not being completely unrealistic with your wage for that person. And absolutely, you should also be paying, in addition to a solid hourly rate, the benefits, the caja for that person. It will add up to another 30 or 50% onto their hourly wage, but both a solid wage and their benefits, first of all, are legal obligations if you're going to employ someone here in Costa Rica. And second of all, that wage is going to help people build a better home, try and get into a situation where they're not as vulnerable to the flooding that's happening. Fourth, I want to talk about another macro idea, and really that is to help mitigate climate extremes with the one solution that everybody knows is effective, and that's reforestation, conservation, and protecting green buffers that do the work of slowing down these enormous doses of rainfall. This week, we actually said goodbye to one of our area's most important voices in conservation, somebody who had really inspired me, was a mentor, almost a father figure who had brought me into my watershed restoration work. Tom Pfeiffer had passed away on November 11th. People who are familiar specifically with this area know that Tom was a guy who came down to Costa Rica with the ideas of permaculture, which in dealing with water are summed up by slow it down, spread it out, and sink it in. Everywhere in Costa Rica, well, first of all, one of the biggest things we need to do are going to be protecting those forests on the slopes where all of this rainfall collects and is concentrated down into rivers. You can do that, again, by helping your local fire brigades, which are valiantly springing up all over the Pacific areas and protecting those forests from damage. You can also almost always find a local reforestation organization that will be active in your area. You can also protect or help protect conserved areas by either donating so that they can be managed, visiting them so that they get your financial support that way, or you may find that there are organizations creating spaces for conservation in your community, which, by the way, we are only $200 per month away from protecting the 187 acres of forest that I've been bringing up on my channel. If you're interested in contributing long-term to protect basically the birthplace of one of our rivers, do be sure to send me an email to matt@costaricamatt.com. So anyhow, when you're investing in Costa Rica, when you're visiting, you want to think about land use practices that slow down, absorb rainfall, spread it out, and sink it in, just like a good permaculture guru would want. Rest in peace, Tom. We will continue spreading that word forever. And to come to my last point that I wanted to discuss, yeah, if you own a property, you should absolutely make sure that your runoff is not having a negative effect on your neighbors or the local ecosystem. If you see that water is spilling out from your property and causing soil erosion below you, you're contributing to this flooding problem. You should absolutely look at both your private property and what you can do on your lot to mitigate this kind of runoff. And you should be working to make sure that your community, your homeowners association, is also designing their runoff mitigation so that your community is not contributing to this flooding problem. There are some great examples of how you can create landscapes that retain water rather than letting it all run off. Here in Guanacaste, it also benefits you when you get to that dry season and you've got more moisture stored in your groundwater aquifers, streams, even the topsoil when you've done the right work to protect and infiltrate rainwater. So if you're interested, if you have questions about helping here in Guanacaste, if you'd like contacts for the organizations I mentioned, you can send me an email to matt@costaricamatt.com. We'll be back next week, Friday, live at noon, probably talking about the expat relocation retreat up in La Fortuna with Michael Allen and Sarah Elena. Anyway, thanks very much for joining me this Friday here. Have a good week and take care.